Welcome! Hi, I'm Mikki and this is Mikkipedia, where I sit down and chat to doctors, professors, athletes, practitioners and experts in their fields related to health, nutrition, fitness and well-being. And I'm delighted that you're here. Morena everyone, I am Mikki, you are listening to Mikkipedia and it is the week between Christmas and New Year. I hope that you have managed to take a bit of a breather, enjoy the festive season and also get some well-earned recovery as we head into 2022. Today on the podcast I speak to Mimmi Kotka, who is an amazing runner who has really made a name for herself in trail running in 2016 when she won the CCC, which is part of the UTMB, a race which is 101 kilometres long with over 6,000 metres of elevation. And she won that by almost half an hour. She very quickly sort of came onto the running scene, but had been involved since 2011, doing other races, really developing this love of running in the mountains. Mimmi and I talk all about how she sort of progressed into where she is at now with her running, but also how her upbringing, and whilst she wasn't a runner in her younger years, she has a deep love of the outdoors and wilderness and has had from a young age. And so we speak about some of the earlier influences that led Mimmi to where she is at now. Mimmi and I have a really in-depth discussion of her training and her racing and her experience with relative energy deficiency in sport. So Mimmi is a nutritionist, however her area or specialty wasn't sports nutrition at the time that she developed relative energy deficiency in sport. And we talk through how she worked with her endocrinologist and her team of specialists in addition to putting into practice some of her own nutrition knowledge to help get her out of that place. And Mimmi just shares some of her experience, of course recognizing that this was her experience and it may be helpful for you if you're in this similar space, but it's not necessarily the only path forward. And so we talk about the importance of having the help of a health professional for any athlete that might be experiencing REDS. In addition to Mimmi's running, she's also a co-founder of Moonvalley, which is an organic sports nutrition brand founded with fellow trail running legends Emily Forsberg and Ida Nilsson. Mimmi and I chat about her running, her upbringing, her lifestyle. We talk about Moonvalley and relative energy deficiency in sport. There is something here for anyone that loves to be inspired by people who just go at it and who are real problem solvers, and I think you'll really love this. So Mimmi can be found at her website, mimmikotka.se, and I will pop her website and the website for Moonvalley in the show notes, and also Mimmi's Instagram account. So team, if you want to support the podcast, it would be amazing if you were to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform and also give us a 5-star review. That would just really help lift our presence in the podcast world, and so more people will be able to find Mikkipedia, which would be amazing. Before we get on into the interview, I'd just like to remind anyone who is interested in the Mondays Matter program, the cart opens for this in the new year on the 1st of January, and the best thing to do is to get on the wait list so you get early access and early access discounts to the 8-week program. And this is the protein sparing modified fast plan that incorporates diet breaks, time restricted eating, it has workout suggestions, and also critically those protein sparing modified fast days, which can accelerate fat loss but also preserve muscle mass as well. So over the last year I've recognized what a game changer this is in terms of helping people meet their body composition goals in a way that doesn't feel so restrictive. So that is Mondays Matter Summer Edition. The waitlist for this will be in the show notes. Sign up to get early information. So sit back and enjoy this conversation that I had with Mimmi Kotka. Mimmi, thank you so much for being here for your Thursday evening, my Friday morning. I'm so stoked to be able to sit down with you, particularly because, well, for a number of reasons. One, you're an amazing runner, and I love to talk to amazing runners about how they run, how they train, how they experience it, and also as a runner with that shared passion. Like, I always feel like there's just, we get together, we don't know each other, but we're already mates. Like, that's always how it feels.
Yeah.
But two, as well, you're a nutritionist. And I know that with Moonvalley, with your own experience with sorting your nutrition for your, to keep you healthy and running strong, like there's a lot of things that we can sort of chat about. And we've got that sort of shared passion for food and health and things like that. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mikki. As I told you, I was super happy when you asked me to join the podcast because I found my way to your podcast, even though it's like very far away. And it's, super cool to be chatting with you because I kind of feel the same, that we have this shared ground with both running and nutrition. And we can probably have like a 10-hour podcast if we wanted to, just like chatting about stuff. So great to be here.
I know, right? One of the first things I want to ask you about, Mimmi, is you seem to have gotten into running at quite a late stage. Well, late stage. I mean, we're not like spring chickens, but we're certainly not like over the hill. But as I understand it, you were an outdoor enthusiast, loved the outdoors, but not necessarily running. Was that just your parents' influence sort of getting you out and about, or how? Yeah, tell me sort of a little bit about your background there.
Yeah, so I grew up like super into outdoor stuff. I was a scout when I was a kid, and then I was always doing this downhill skiing and ski touring and hiking and spending time in the mountains. And in my teens, I was really into free diving as well. And so biking and just being outside all the time. It's always been my biggest interest. But I was never a competitive athlete of any sort growing up. I just I didn't do any sports, any competitive sports. It was all about the outdoors and like being in nature and having fun and like more of the enjoyment side of things. So I had absolutely no experience in sports. And then when I became a bit older, I was living in Stockholm, which is, well, compared to where you live, it's not a big city, but for us Swedes, it's a big city and, city life. And I was working a ton, and I just felt that I lost a bit of my like outdoor passion, even though Stockholm is a great city to do stuff. It's still like, so I just felt that I wanted like a challenge. So I was 29, so definitely no spring chicken. And I just decided to do something called the Swedish Classic, which is kind of a thing that sporty Swedes do. It's that you ski a 90-kilometer Nordic ski race. And it's basically like the biggest Nordic ski race in Sweden. And then the biggest biking race is a 300-kilometer race around the lake. And then you do a open water swim in a super for 2 kilometers. And then you do a 30K I wouldn't say trail run, but it's more terrain run. That's very big in Sweden. And I just, and you do all of these events in 1 year, and it's called the Swedish Classic, and it's gives you bragging rights at coffee breaks. And I just decided to do that. And so I started to run to be able to manage this 30K race. And I I was living very close to nice trails, and I just started running on trails. And I never did any of the other stuff. I just got really, really into trail running straight away. It was almost like I think I had been looking for it because it was, I just loved the simplicity of running, because I could have my adventure, I could have my outdoor time and nature and all the experience, but it's just, running is so simple. So I really found my passion there.
Mimmi, how many years did you spend away from your outdoor roots? Like, how many years did it sort of take for you to go, I'm missing something here?
Well, I never left it completely. It's just that maybe when I was a kid and in my teens and early 20s, it was kind of the highest priority in life. I would live in places where in the mountains or by the ocean, and everything was just about, doing the ski thing. I worked at the mountain station, and then after university, it was still a big interest, but life takes over, and it was more perhaps city life and doing stuff on the weekends. And I kept running for a few years, actually, just having like normal training and having this weekend runs and doing small competitions. And it was actually a few years later that I actually decided to it's actually our family decided it was in 2014. Me and my husband decided that we kind of wanted to do a bit of a change in our life. We wanted to own less stuff and have more time for things that we loved. And that's obviously the outdoors, and have more adventure in life. So we decided to change a lot, and we sold the house we had and just scaled down everything in life and made room for more passion. And for me, that made room for more running. And from there, it's only been like more and more adventure and stuff.
Yeah, I heard that story about, you said that you and your husband had made the decision to sort of move to Chamonix and live the lifestyle you wanted. Were your parents or your friends, were they sort of surprised that you guys made this decision, or did they think this was something that you would sort of do? Because I feel like it's a really brave thing to do, Mimmi. Like, I think a lot of us would probably want to take that step, but feel a little, not trapped, but that feels like such a courageous thing to do to me.
Yeah, so first of all, we spend a lot of time in Chamonix now, but it's been a process. And we still spend some time of the year in Sweden, so it's a bit of back and forth. But I think the decision to simplify and to get rid of stuff and to it is a decision that I think that once you make, you kind of reason with yourself that, oh, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? We just go back to business as usual and just live our life with but once you cut yourself loose, I think it's no turning back really, because you will just continue on your journey. And for us, it's been like that. But we sold our house and moved into a very small apartment, and we have also had like different work situations than before, and just made a lot of changes to have more flexibility. But I remember we had a going away party when we were leaving for the first time for a period, and we had just sold our villa, and people were at the party, and everyone was just, I told this story before, but everyone was just, oh my God, you're so lucky, you get to do this, you get to travel, because we had like a year of travel planned out, and then we didn't know what would come after that. But then everyone was like, oh, you're so lucky, and what if we can do this? And I remember thinking at the party that every single person there could have done it if they wanted to. So yeah, it's just like you say, I think you need to kind of be ready to let go of some things, maybe other people's expectations, your own expectations on what you want. For us, it was just doing really honest like list of the things we valued in life, and realizing that, well, these 3 or 4 things are important and the rest isn't. So maybe we need to let go of the rest and go for these. And I think that's key to like, because you can have the life you want, but you cannot have perhaps everything else as well.
Yeah, and I totally loved how I heard you put it. You can have everything, but you can't have everything.
No,
so it's that you can really have what you value. And
what I said is that you can have everything you want, but you cannot have everything. But you need to decide what
that's right.
So you need to decide what it is you want, and then you need to let go of the rest. And I think that's like the biggest lesson I've learned in all of this, and it panned out really well. So we are super happy with the choices we've made.
And Mimmi, do you think that your running would have taken a different trajectory had you not made that decision and you'd just stayed in that sort of space in life that you guys had already created for yourselves? Like, do you ever think about that?
Yes, I think it would have been different. But on the other hand, I had already dipped my toe in. I was already a super passionate trail runner, but I definitely was a weekend warrior, and I was living in the very south part of Sweden, which is completely flat. And for me, it was just this. In the beginning, we were still living in Sweden. It was just this mindset of putting more time and prioritizing trail running more. And then I stumbled onto ultra running, and I got the chance to represent Sweden in the ultra trail championships, and that was my like first ultra trail race, and that was the point that changed my life completely, because after that it's like, oh, this is adventure and running and all the lovely stuff you want in life, all wrapped into one, and this is my path. So and I did that race in 2015. So from there, it's just I was lost cause after that. I would say I was like, this is my this is what I'm doing.
I find it so interesting that you don't have that you didn't sort of seek out the competition earlier in life, even though you did so much in the outdoors, but you weren't that competitive. And that seems so different now with your running. Like you've had an amazing career to date where you've, taken on the CCC, I'm going to get a lot of these probably wrong. Is it the Surly?
Let's just call it TDS.
Yeah, there you go. TDS. You came first in Quarter Trail to Alpages. I'm not sure that I've got that right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a string of podiums and firsts. And of course, if we go right up to most recently, you came third in the UTMB, and you seem to have such a drive to complete and compete in those events. I'm surprised you didn't find it earlier, to be honest. Sort of competitive.
So I think I have been competitive all my life. It's just that it's taken other forms than sports. I mean, I like maybe grades at university and stuff like that. So I definitely have been I have that personality. It's just that I haven't been in sports, and the outdoors has never, before I started doing running races, it had never occurred to me that you could like compete in adventure, so to speak. But on the other hand, it's like I was always the person that would compete with people anyways, like trying to be first on the bike and everything. So I'm definitely a competitive person, embarrassingly competitive sometimes. So it just took other expressions, I guess, earlier. And I've always felt, I still do that. I've always competed against myself. And that's also what I still do. And I think that's why ultra trail is a good sport for me, because it is a sport where you need to be competing with yourself. So I think that that's a very good match, because it's like I've always want to improve myself, and I always want to do better and like find out more and stuff. And this kind of running is not so much about what other people do. It's more like how you manage yourself and improve yourself. So I think that's why it fits me well.
Yeah. And I think that's such a good way to approach it as well, because there's so much in ultra running you just can't control.
Yeah.
You can't control the environment, the conditions, the weather. You can't control how other people race. So to have that sort of focus on how you sort of manage yourself is like, you know, that's the I think the thing which can drive success, I suppose.
Yeah, and I would say it's a prerequisite for success in this sport, that you need to be like doing your own thing, because, well, if you follow someone else's agenda, it's like you say, it's such complex sports. And as you know, like UTMB, we might talk about that. That's a race where all the top tier ultra runners in the world line up every year, and it just never goes as planned. So that race is always like ending up in, there's always favorites, but there's a bunch of them, and then someone has a great day, but a lot of people don't. And I think the only thing you can do is like manage yourself and hold on for dear life and hope you have a good day, really. So
Mimmi, how many times have you done UTMB?
So I've done it twice. I finished it twice. And I actually started it in 2018, but I had to stop at the very beginning, because I was having real I was having real health problems back in August of 2018. And I was in very bad shape, and I should never have been standing on that starting line. I was just blind to how bad I had mononucleosis and Epstein-Barr, and was super anemic, and I had broken fingers, and I was just really burnt out. But I still so badly wanted to do that race. It's a personal project of mine to do that loop around Mont Blanc. So I really wanted to do it that year, but I couldn't do it. So, but I finished it in 2019.
It's amazing listening to you talking about sort of the state you were in, but that desire to toe the start line. Like, I just feel like, as we were just talking about, like having that competitive sort of spirit within yourself, it almost seems, yeah, you're right, like a prerequisite for being an elite runner is in part sort of, and this is not a good, I'm not saying this is a good or a bad thing, it's just a thing, like you almost have to put your physical sort of ailments, if you like, aside, or they almost don't even matter, because that passion and that drive almost is overtakes everything else.
Yes, yes. You can be a bit smarter than I was, though. You should probably like not have the blinders on that in that way. But you know, endurance athletes and ultra endurance athletes, I mean, it's a certain type of person that kind of likes to feel bad and seek out discomfort and fatigue and all kinds of physiological stressors. So we are kind of drawn to that, and you have this tough it out attitude, and that's like the charm of the sport. So it's very hard to know where the line is. I actually think the stuff we were speaking about before, that me coming from a non athletic background perhaps was a part of it as well, because I just didn't have, or I don't even know if I have now, but like a deeper understanding of sports in that way. And maybe I had good results a bit too quick, and I just my knowledge and my my experience just wasn't there. So I think it takes some time to learn.
Mimmi, so you arrived at the start line in that injured state. How long had you been sort of grappling with the viruses and like your broken fingers? And I think you mentioned something about a knee on another podcast. Like how long of sort of 2018 had that been going on?
Well, so I had a really good early season in 2018, and I did 3 big races in 3 months. That I did really well in all 3 of them, 3 long ultra races. And in the last race, it was a race here in Chamonix called the Mont Blanc Marathon, the 90K distance, and it's a race that has it's very in my heart. I love it. It's beautiful, and I had like a very deep sense of wanting to do something special with that race. So I really pushed myself, but I had some falls and I injured my knee halfway through. And then in the last downhill to the finish line, I sprinted with a guy that I know, and I fell and broke 2 fingers. And I think I was probably very, very tired already going into that race. But after that, the body I was so focused on just continuing, and I didn't rest enough, and I had all these injuries and they just never healed. And I think that's when I became like trapped in this kind of bad spiral, so to speak, with health problems and a bit of a physical burnout, I would say. And it took a long time to get it sorted because I was way too stubborn and just kept on training and racing. While my health was deteriorating. So bad decisions.
Mimmi, did you see others around you in a similar, having a similar experience, like maybe not the, broken bones or anything, but people you could also see your competitors pushing through when they may not have been best to? Like, was that a normal thing for the people around you? Or
so what I notice is that because I have a lot of like female role models in this sport that I look up to, and that inspires me a lot. And most of them kind of have 1 or 2 good years, and then they do these amazing results. And after that, there's just nothing. And a lot of them disappears, and you never see them perform at a high level again. So there's definitely this pattern in these sports, both on the male and female side. And I just think it's a very young sport, and it's very demanding on the body. And there's just combined with this personality type, like for me, example, after this failure on my first 100-miler, I just decided that instead of healing my injuries, I just there is one worse 100-miler in the world in the Reunion Island in 6 weeks. I'm going to go and do that just to prove to myself I can do it. And so we're all the same. I mean, so it's very hard. Yeah. I think the balance for longevity in this sport is very hard to strike right. But the ones who do it, they have a long career. And that's when you can really do amazing things. So.
For sure. And Mimmi, your were you coached at the time, or are you coached now, or are you self sort of coached? What's that look like
so
for you?
I started with being self-coached and just going on feel. And then during the years, I've had some coaching in periods of time, but it's been both good and bad. It hasn't done anything good for my development, nor has it. I mean, there is no connection between how well I've done and if I have a coach or not. But I finally have found a collaboration that works really, really well. So now I do have a coach, and it's my business partner and friend as well, Ida Nilsson, who's a great athlete, and she has a lifetime of knowledge from the track and field and has this like very athletic approach to things, while she's still a top tier trail runner. So I think that's a really good fit. So, but I just convinced her to coach me. So nagged her.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we don't, it's that we don't quite recognize our own limitations, I suppose, which is exactly potentially why you were in the position you were in at that time in 2018. Yet, as I understand it, you continued to sort of push through until you finally took a break in August 2020. Have I got that right?
August 2021, actually. So I just kept on training and racing, but my results in races were just showing the state I was in. And for a long period, I was also not allowed to race these types of races because I was just too unhealthy. I was severely anemic, and hormones were really bad, and and my immune system was really not that. Yeah, I guess it was the anemia and the immune system that put the red light for me competing. So yeah, but then finally I'm stubborn, but finally in August 2021 I kind of got the message from my body that okay, you need to reboot this system or it's shut down. So
yeah, I would really love to talk to you about that experience, because I feel like, you've been really open about it on a couple of interviews, and I feel like there's so much that, runners of all ability can probably learn from your experience. What were sort of the steps that you took to reboot yourself, basically? So, obviously you were not physically in a good state. You mentioned that you weren't allowed to race or because of the physical state you were in. Who made that decision for you? Who said, Mimmi, nah, you're not in this?
So it was actually doctors in a health program so I mainly raced races on the Ultra Trail World Tour, and they do check their athletes sometimes to see that they're healthy enough to be in a starting line and so on. But it's for me I realized I had problems, and then you just start to trying to find solutions, and I'm embarrassed to say that I'm a nutritionist since a long time back, but before my expertise has been more in perhaps I'm a trained molecular nutritionist, so I have been working with very specific food supplements and product development, and my understanding of the specific nutritional needs of an athlete just wasn't there, and I just never heard of the term REDS, which we probably will come to. But so I just tried to fix all these problems one by one, and it just nothing helped. And then in the summer of 2021, I kind of started to stumble across this concept of REDS, and started to reading up on the literature and started to educate myself on that. And I just okay, so this is exactly my problems. But how can I be in an energy deficiency? I'm a nutritionist and I eat like a horse, and I have a super relaxed relationship with food, and my weight is normal, and blah, blah. And then I actually sat down and did the math and just energy in, energy out, simple stuff. And just oh, okay, I'm in a severe energy deficiency and have been for years. So then the wheels started turning and things started to click into place. And from there, I was able to kind of actually reverse every single health problem I had in a very short time. So I just needed to find the root cause, so to speak.
And so with your nutrition training, anyone can do those sort of calculations in terms of the how many calories you burn in a day and how many calories you need for everything that you're doing. And I think it's that step of, okay, so now I have to eat more in order to reverse the stuff. And I know there's, obviously there's more to it than that. And I feel like because of what you said, your relaxed relation, it was never about restricting food for you. This was an unintentional thing that sort of accumulated over time.
Yes, and definitely so. And it's just that I think the way I was eating was very good for a person perhaps training 7 to 10 hours a week. The way I started to run trail, doing shorter training sessions and living in a flat part of Sweden and just being a weekend warrior, then it was just good. But as the miles and training hours got bigger, and as the environment got tougher and the races got longer and the training got longer, everything just stacked up. And the caloric intake I was eating more, but it just didn't catch up. So I think that's what happened. So what I did actually, I will say, with you and me say it's fairly easy to do calculations about caloric expenditure and intake. Well, it's not easy at all. But what I think that I could do it myself with some. I had a really good endocrinologist that I discussed with, and then I could do all the work getting back to where I need to be on my own. But it's because I'm very experienced in food logging and I have this broader knowledge. I think it could be very difficult if you don't have that background. So what I did first of all was actually just for a few weeks, just because I'm not a fan of counting calories and doing macros and stuff, but just for a few weeks recalibrating the system on, okay, setting a limit, you need to eat this and this amount of calories. How does this actually look on a plate? So you get like a sense of, oh, okay, it needs to be these kinds of portions and these kinds of piles of food, really. So that's what I did first of all.
Did it change the amount of food or just the proportion of those things on your plate? Like if you're at each meal, so was it just that you reduced down the volume of your vegetables to make more room for the other things, or how did that look?
So first of all, now we're really getting into details, and I really want to say that this is an approach every single athlete needs to. If you have this kind of problem, you need to address it, but the details of how you do it is, of course, very individual. But for me, it was mainly about adding a lot of snacks and having a bigger window throughout the day. So let's say I didn't change the portions so much, like because the 3 main meals of the day were really good, but I just added in 3 snacks and made sure I had didn't have a huge time in a 24-hour window where I was not eating. That really made a difference for me. Like, as soon as I got up, get something, I would go up, brush my teeth, and then go out to the kitchen, make coffee, and have something to eat, and have like an evening snack, and just make sure that I got enough energy throughout the day. That really did the trick. And just implementing all this, being really like disciplined with all these sports nutrition specific things, like recovery meals, and making sure you get enough proteins throughout the day and complex carbs with meals and stuff. Just this, the stuff that we tell others to do. just being
Yeah.
very like disciplined about that for myself as well. And it worked out
Yeah.
well.
How long did it take for you to start noticing the benefits, Mimmi?
A few months, and I really I did cut my training volume as well, but I had tried that before because I was suspecting I might be overtraining, but since I was kind of figuring this out for such a long time, I had tried that stuff too, cutting down training, and nothing just seemed to work. It was just these nutritional strategies that really did the trick for me, and quick. So it was just a few months, and then my hormone levels were back up and the system were rebooting again, and I just started to feel so much better, and the blood values improved, and they have stayed well since then. So it's just, I think the nutrition piece for me in my case, which is not to say it's like this for everyone, was really the key here.
I think that what, your experience really highlights some of the challenges that people in your position, but also just people sort of across the board who have a love of endurance sport, love getting out there, but then they've also got sort of real life on top of this passion.
Yes.
And I see it a lot, this unintentional under fueling, therefore under recovering. And it's not that it's happening on purpose, but it's the last thing that people address, or it's something else that is, that's not planned for, I suppose. We follow a training program, and you sort of, but you oftentimes don't think about putting into place, being really specific with your nutrition requirements on top of that.
No, I think you're right, and I think it was the same for me. I mean, I had a lot on my plate with all the training and stuff and work, and it's just I felt so stupid when I sat down and really did an analysis of everything, and I'm like, well, why didn't I think of this before? so I think it could be very. And it's also about this understanding of your needs as an endurance athlete, that you really need to understand that you are not, your requirements are not the same as a sedentary person or someone who works out like 45 minutes 3 times a week. It's just completely different, and you really need to have a nutrition approach that supports your output. And I think it's very easy to fall short, especially when you do big hours. It's just, you need to eat so much food, Mikki.
How many hours a week training would you do, Mimmi?
Well, it depends in periods, and I'm not a huge mileage person when it comes in this world, but I mean, if you do 15 hours of training, 20 hours of training, maybe even more some weeks, and it's the same for high level triathletes, and it's a massive amount of energy that you expend. And as you said, if you have a busy life, it really takes some planning to get that nutrition right to support all that training, and also just an active lifestyle on top of that, with like dogs and hiking. And it depends on what job you have as well. Maybe you have an active job, then it gets really tricky to get in enough fuel. So, which is the opposite to almost all other humans in this part of the world. So it's a very different situation.
And I think that's, in part, maybe some of the problem is that, of course, that the message on sort of social media, if you're on social media or things like that, and you're interested in nutrition, a lot of the conversations are around things like fasting and, eating less and 1 meal a day and things like that, because they're speaking to this generic sort of 90% of the population, probably could do well with a little bit of managing their intake in that way. So I know with a lot of the people that I speak to, athletes I speak to, there's just some confusion of, what's the best approach from a health and an athletic sort of performance. Whereas particularly someone in the situations that we're discussing, it's definitely aiming to get in more calories than restricting and having fueling the work required, I guess.
Yeah, so definitely that's a good thing. That's a great thing to remember, to fuel for the work required. And it's like you said, it's all this great research about the health benefits of intermittent fasting, and I would be the first one to say that that's something for someone who need to improve their health should try. For a high level endurance female athlete, I perhaps would be a bit more cautious of recommending that, because it can really wreck your hormones and cause a lot of damage. So it's the context. Nutritional advice is out there. You just need to find the ones that is the right context for you, who you are. So it's
for sure.
It's very confusing. I get that. So because there's so much information out there.
There really is. And on the sort of sports nutrition front, can you chat to me about how you now approach your training sessions with regards to the fueling that you how often you might fuel and the types of foods that you use? And of course, this is absolutely specific to you, but I do know that a lot of people are really interested to know how the elite do it.
Yeah. So first of all, the first thing I did was I'm super happy that I'm right now I'm taking the International Olympic Committee's diploma in sports nutrition, because I really feel like when all this happened, I just felt like, I really have experience here, and I have the academic background to do this, and I could really merge this, but I also need the knowledge. So I'm in the process of learning as much as I can and keeping up with this developing science and stuff. But for me, so some practical some practical things are like, I do not do any fasted workouts in the morning, which I know is a very popular thing, but for me, it's not worth it in terms of the cost on the hormonal system, I would say. And I think that might be the case for a lot of females. So you need to think about that, because it's as a high volume athlete, you're probably getting a lot of the benefits of low glycogen storage training anyway. So it might just be an added stress in the end. So that's one thing. Breakfast. I also fuel. I fuel a bit more during long runs, actually. I just maybe not raise amounts, but I try to bring more snacks on long runs. That's the easy way to say it. And then also, as I mentioned, being super disciplined with recovery and eating after training, and making sure you get you replenish after training sessions. And I've also actually increased my protein intake a bit. I've just increased it by adding more snacks that contains protein, so that the protein is spread out throughout the day. That's been very beneficial as well. So those are my top 3 things, I think, and also just spreading out the time in the 24-hour window that I eat, the opposite to fasting, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting actually. I talk to lots of athletes about that eating window, because many of them are quite concerned that it expands sort of beyond 12 hours. And I'm like, well, the fasting and exercise bring with it many of, very similar benefits. So, and you're already doing the exercise, and to layer that fasting on top of the exercise as a stress is going to probably be detrimental to you in the long term, rather than that you're going to get this, increased sort of benefit from having that additional stress on. So I appreciate what you're saying there.
Yeah, and I mean, just as a note on that, it is very individual. This is what works for me. Maybe someone else needs to do it in another way. I just think that you need to be very analytical. If you try stuff, and if you try nutrition interventions, just as you would try something new in your training, you should be honest. You should be honest about how it's working out for you. Are you improving? Are your results improving? Or are you being grumpy and your health is deteriorating? And because that's something I see a lot too. People go on these diets and regimes and they don't really improve and they don't feel good. It's not like helping them, and they still continue to do it. But maybe you can always try stuff, but you need to be honest about the how it's working for you. So that's
absolutely. Yeah. Mimmi, you mentioned that you had severe anemia. Was it I imagine that you would have supplemented to help sort of improve that, but have you, are there any supplements that you continue to take now? Are there or did that actually resolve once your energy availability actually increased? Because obviously, obvious to me and you, energy availability plays a big role in that anemia sort of story. So,
I mean, I had a ton of typical REDS symptoms like anemia, lowered immune response, and some viruses that was activated, and amenorrhea. And I'm just speaking about all of this, and it's a bit. It's just because I know there's so many people out there with these problems, so I'm kind of just like talking about them, because maybe someone will like, oh, this, but this is me. So that's why I'm like just babbling on about all the problems. But really, I think it's like, if REDS is a bucket with 20 holes in it, or 10 holes, and all these holes are one symptom, really fixing the energy deficiency, it stops all the water from coming out. While before I was trying to fix one thing, perhaps with supplementing with iron, or trying to test the diet because I was having GI issues or whatever. And it's just like trying to fix, block one of these holes, which only makes more water pour out from the other ones. But so it's kind of sorted itself out really when I addressed the energy bit. And I think we don't need to go into details, but there's definitely a connection between overtraining and things, and anemia, and all these things are just connected to this body. The body goes into hibernation mode, and it just tries to save energy. So it just turns down the thermostat on all the systems in the body, and you just cut yourself short in all types of ways, really. So that's what's happening. So,
Mimmi, when you started eating more, were you excited to appreciate that you could just get stronger and be a better athlete for it, or were you worried that your body composition would change for the worse? Did you have any of those sort of because I know that many people sort of listening to this, I mean, one of the things that they fear is that they're going to gain body fat, and then that is going to impact negatively on their performance. So how were those things for you, your sort of thought patterns and processes?
Yeah, I know that this is a big issue for people, but I'm very fortunate in that sense that maybe because I'm from the adventure side, I'm not super bothered about that. And I'm also a very like muscular. I have a lot of muscle on my body for being a runner. So I've always looked the same kind of, and it's never changed that much. And I also have a very relaxed relationship with food. And this is something that we really need to stress, that it's, if you have some sort of disordered eating as contributing to your underfueling, then that is, of course, the stuff you need to address first of all, because that will just make it impossible to. I mean, if you have issues around eating certain types of food, or you are very like restrictive with food, I think it will be very hard to address these types of problems. So you need to become friends with that first of all, and that requires another skill set, I would say, that's more working with the mental parts. But so I don't have those problems, and I don't have this fear of being heavy really either, because I am a heavy runner. So from the get-go. And so I'm not the best one to discuss around that, but I do know there's a lot of disordered eating, and in the world of endurance running, and it's hard for me to have an educated opinion about it because I don't care too much.
But do you know what? I think that you saying that I think it's so beneficial for people to hear, that, you are a strong runner and you just viewed it as this is what I need to heal myself. And those thoughts didn't even enter your mind, because I think in part, like, just because you're such an inspirational runner and you are a role model to others out there, then I think it's really valuable for people to hear how you approach it, because even if that might not be how they've been thinking about it, so much of how you feel and what you think can really dictate how you then act. And, I think that whole shifting that mindset is not just because you've had this sort of unhealthy relationship with food, if you like, in the past, doesn't mean it always has to be that way. And just even hearing you have your own, how it was for you, I think that could be so beneficial for people to sort of understand and hear.
Yeah, we all have our. I mean, we all have our own stories and stuff, but it's different for everyone. But I do think that for these kinds of once again, endurance athletes, I think in our world there's a lot of unintentional underfueling, but perhaps in sports where it's not such a high energy demand, there is definitely a big proportion of intentional restricting, I would say, especially in some sports. And of course I would say that's a much bigger problem, and it's especially when it's cultivated as a culture within a sport, then it's really sad. And a bit, because you and me know that it's just for longevity in a sport you need to be healthy. And especially when you grow up and your body is developing, that's when you need to have good health if you're gonna continue to do well and have a long and nice career in your sport. So
I think that it's really fortunate to find something you really love doing. This is regardless of what it is for people, because if you love doing it, then you want to ensure that you've got all strategies in place to allow you to continue on in the sport. I totally agree with you with that, and particularly trail running, being out in nature, doing it with friends, ticking off events. Like there are so many amazing things that sort of inspire us to get out and do it, that ensuring that you can, I think, is a really I think we're lucky in that respect, because there's such motivation to do things in a way that allows for that to happen, and part of that is, of course, fueling properly.
Yeah, and I mean, it's supposed to be fun, right? And life is supposed to be nice as well, and it's part of that for sure. So maybe, especially if you're a recreational athlete, you should really. I mean, it means a lot. I mean, the racing and the training, it means a lot to people I know. But you should also be feeling good. So you need to remember that as well. And life is supposed to be good.
Mimmi, so outside of running, do you do strength training as well?
Yes, I do strength training in periods. I have a body type that's really keen on taking on strength. So I actually don't do too much of it, because I build some. I have such an easy time to build muscle, so I need to like restrict my strength training. I do love it though; it's super cool, and I do some. I'm a intermittent yoga practitioner as well, and of course I do a lot of cross training just by skiing and Nordic skiing and biking, and so I do mix up my training a lot.
Yeah, nice. And what about, Mimmi, when you are racing, what do you like to fuel racing? What works well for you?
So it's actually a work in progress, as it is for most of us. So ultra running is very specific, it requires a lot of testing and trial and error to see what you like and to see what you can tolerate. And as the distances are different, I find that I need to adjust my nutrition plan. So I don't have a set recipe at all, but obviously in training I do have a set recipe, and I really like to have more perhaps solid food and more food like bars when I train and stuff. I'm not super keen on having gels in training and stuff, and that's more perhaps for race situations. And and just real food sometimes too, or maybe even stop and have like a more like fuel the way the road bikers fuel. Stop at the bakery and have a coffee and a croissant is nice too. You can do that when you run as well. So stuff like that. But I mostly eat bars in training actually.
Mm-hmm. And are they Moonvalley bars?
Yes, of course, most of them are. But I eat other stuff too. I like nuts, butter, and I like to, as I said, I like to bring perhaps something real and maybe even candy sometimes. But it's of course it's a lot of Moonvalley bars, because it's a company I'm a founder of. So yeah, there's a lot of Moonvalley bars.
And so can you just have I want to be mindful of your time. I mean, I know that we are probably over. We need to close this up in a minute, but can you just outline for us like Moonvalley and I mean, I know you're co-founder of it. What's that process been like for you? Has that been something like that you'd always wanted to do? Was it just an idea that sort of came to you and then it sort of progressed from there?
Yeah, so Moonvalley is an organic sports nutrition brand that I started together with two other trail athletes, Emily Forsberg and Ida Nilsson, and they're also Swedish. The Ida and Emily lives in Norway now, but we just had this idea that we wanted to make the energy bars and sports nutrition that we wanted to have ourselves. That's basically, instead of just more like something you would make at home in your own kitchen, perhaps, than most bars out there. And we just felt that we could do something really nice with like plant-based ingredients and using Nordic ingredients like oats. And we just had this idea, and then it turned into a company that's been around for a few years now, and it's just super exciting. For me, I really wanted to do it because I felt I worked as a consultant for companies in the food supplement industry, but I'm a food first person, and I just felt like this is something I would really like to do with the sustainability of Nordic ingredients and the organic stuff. And it's just, it's been a very good an amazing project. It's so much more difficult than you think, but that's also why it's so lovely. And you shouldn't know how difficult it is when you say, "Yeah, let's do it." Then you just do it. So yeah, no. So we're Moonvalley is humming along, so it's going well.
Awesome. And where are they available, Mimmi? Like, is it just in Europe? Is it in the States as well?
So at the moment, we are, when it comes to stores, we are mainly in stores in Scandinavia and in France. And then for our online sales, it's Europe. I'm not entirely sure about the possibilities of shipping to Australia and US and other places, because it's a bit of a difficult with the shipping. I guess it depends on how much you order and stuff. So at the moment it's mainly Europe. Yeah, but we are working on it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love that you've really brought your passions to life, haven't you? You're professional trail runner, you're in the food industry, you're creating these amazing like products that you wanted to sort of have when you were out running, or just as snacks or whatnot. Like, you've really worked hard to create as it seemed from the outside, the things that, the life that you want. And I just absolutely love that, Mimmi.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a lot of stuff to do, but I mean, it's just so much fun. And I mean, we have been talking about perhaps the darker side of running a lot today, but I mean, it is like just my biggest passion, and I love it. And my other passion is like food and nutrition. So you're right. I feel so fortunate to be able to do those two things. And I just, I mean, it's passion driven for sure, but that doesn't mean it comes with no obstacles, like we talked about today. So
completely. And whilst, yes, we did, we talked about your experience, I feel like the sort of the end result of that problem solving to get back to where you sort of started and what you love. Like, I feel I'm hoping that people will take that from it rather than the negative aspects, really, of what we talked about. Mimmi, where can people find you?
So I'm on social media at Mimmi Kotka, easy to find, and then also at moonvalley.me. That's the two places.
Nice. And I cut you off, so please tell me, what were you going to say? Because we can easily pop that back in before we put your contact details.
No, I was just going to say that that I really feel like when I went public with my problems, I had so much response from people writing to me and telling me that this is my story too, both men and women in equal proportions. And I just felt like, so this is so common and so few people talk about it. So that's why I put so much time into speaking about it, because I really feel like there is disproportionately little said about these problems, because I know they are so incredibly common. So that's why I want to address it a bit more, like a bit more than it is addressed today. Because I think if we talk more about it, it gives people the tools they need to address it, and it also hopefully changes the culture where there is cultural problems in sports around this and stuff. So that's why I like to talk about it.
And you're so generous with sort of sharing your story, because it's a lot of people might not do the same thing, Mimmi. So, I love that you took the time to chat to me today.
Thank you, Mikki.
And just my last question is, what's next for you? What's your next race?
So I'm not entirely sure yet what my next race will be, but I'm sort of looking onto the calendar at the moment, but definitely next year. No, I don't know actually. Because it's this time of year when you make plans and they're not set yet, so I couldn't answer. But for sure, I will be doing ultra trail racing next year. You can count on that, but it's not completely set yet, so I don't know.
Well, Mimmi, I am very excited to see how that calendar looks for you as you make those decisions and see you out there racing, because it's just always it's so inspirational to see people that you look up to sort of get out and do their thing. Like when following people like you keeps me motivated to do the, small amount of stuff that I do. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Mikki. It's been lovely talking to you, and keep up the good podcasting.
All right, team, hope you enjoyed that conversation that I had with Mimmi. I certainly did. She is a wealth of knowledge. She's so inspirational. Her mindset is amazing, and we just really wish her well for 2022. And next week on the podcast, I have the pleasure of chatting to Dr. Gabrielle Lyon, who is someone I just absolutely love following on social media, and I really look up to her in terms of her knowledge in and around health and nutrition, and her real no-nonsense way that she talks about it as well. So that is next week. Until that time, you can find me over on Facebook at Williden Nutrition, over on Instagram and Twitter at Mikki Williden, and also over on my website, mikkiwilliden.com, where you can book a consultation with me, sign up to one of my meal plans, or access my recipe access portal, which is another great way to support the podcast. For just $12 a month, you get access to all of the recipes on there which are regularly updated, a weekly email from me, and the ability to pick my brain on anything nutrition related, in addition to weekly forums and member-only Facebook Lives. All right, team, look forward to catching up next week. Have a fabulous new year. See you later.